Hello everyone, it is me, a very snotty Ash, and I'm here today to whack out my crystal ball to take a look at the future of horror with you all today. How exciting! Really, it is a healthy old time for horror movies. This isn't a second-class genre anymore thanks to some heavy-hitting mainstream successes, with Jordan Peele and Ari Aster at the forefront of a revolution in beautiful, evocative horror. And the fruits of that gory labour continue to be nothing but wonderful as the months roll on. Naturally, there are a lot of projects on the horizons of 2020, also known as the plentiful harvest of Stephen King adaptations, so it is important that we get our teeth into the films that could make the biggest splash in the bloody pool of the horror film industry over the next 12 months. So, let's case the titles with the potential to really tickle our pickles when we hit the double 20s pretty damn soon. I am the annual instalment of Ash from What Culture, and these are the 13 most exciting horror movies coming in 2020. 13. Candyman. Though it is definitely a shame that he's not directing, Jordan Peele being the driving force behind the reboot sequel mashup for Candyman is still a huge highlight of the coming year of horror. We'll get to see more of Tony Todd's creepy supernatural killer, which is always a good thing, and Peele has talked a good game so far. His production team say the film will address toxic fandom, which is a bit of a minefield. But more importantly, it has got a great cast led by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, and Peele has quickly proven he knows how to get into our heads. Regardless of whether it takes a more transgressive approach, as his other movies have, remains to be seen. But either way, his credentials and the strength of the brand could make this a real nostalgic winner. Unleash the bees! 12. A Quiet Place Part 2. The film that kicked off a raft of copycat sensory horror movies was a huge winner for John Krasinski in 2018. And while he might have been tempted to let the world just get on with making low-quality rip-offs about a world in which you can't be smelly or something, he is returning to A Quiet Place for a direct sequel. So far, all we know is that the Abbott family and their new friends will once again be trying to survive in a world where sound is punished by swift and bloody death. The concept is already great enough for more to be very welcome, with the ending providing an open expanse for the Abbott family to go wild in. Let's just hope they don't make any more stupid decisions like popping another baby out in the midst of the apocalypse, eh? 11. Saw the Organ Donor. Just when you thought there wasn't anything the Saw franchise could do to really pull anyone back into it, it goes and pulls off a bit of a masterstroke. Even with the main villain gone and the reboot Jigsaw picking up the franchise after it was already killed once, there is clearly still life in the old dog yet. Or at least that's what Chris Rock thinks, at the very least. The most unlikely of Saw saviors, Rock declared himself a fan of the series since its first chapter, which means he knows his franchise onions. Curiously though, and excitingly, this isn't just going to be another here is how Jigsaw cheated death with added trap story. Rock will instead star in a movie set in the same universe alongside Samuel L. Jackson of all people as a police detective and his father. And there's some other people there too, of course, but they're the most exciting ones. There's no sign of Jigsaw yet, but if it's in the same world, you have to expect at least a couple of inside scrambling traps, surely. 10. The Conjuring 3. While some people might be close to experiencing some serious franchise fatigue with the Conjuring shared universe, which also includes Annabelle, The Nun, La Llorona, and The Crooked Man at this point, you can't really doubt the success of it. Particularly when they get to the 8th installment, these types of movies trade down on casting because the scary gimmicks trump the plentiful victims. But Wilson and Farmiga are key to the wonderful horror in this franchise, which adds a different element entirely. Plus, they're both just great. The next chapter's plot is unknown, but given the number of stories the Warrens are a part of and how well the mainline series comes together, there's lots of potential for this to not make the same mistakes as the lackluster spin-offs have yet. 9. The Turning. For anyone into their horror literary history, Henry James's The Turn of the Screw was a watershed moment, setting the path for every haunted house story since. The plot of a governess employed to look after 2 young children in a country house after the deaths of their parents who, gasp, discover everything is haunted is so familiar now it feels like a cliche. But this is all where it came from. For the adaptation, cunningly retitled To the Turning, Mackenzie Davis is the governess, Finn Wolfhard and Brooklyn Prince her young orphan charges, and Jolie Richardson has taken a mysteriously unnamed role, presumably as a ghost. They're always ghosts. Expect old-fashioned chills. While it is out in January, the cast and the fact that producer Steven Spielberg has been trying to get it made for years suggests that it might buck that sort of release windows trend for being a bit shit. Here's hoping anyways. 8. Terrifier 2. Not everything coming out next year for horror fans has to be comparatively well budgeted with big names attached to it to be rather exciting. There's also a lot of supposedly lesser projects that will probably make just as big of a splash with big old horror nerds that like small and grotty stuff. And that would be projects like the sequel to 2016's cult slasher hit, Terrifier. Everybody loves a deadly clown, and director Damien Leone managed to make a pure, thrilling slasher film with the original that was simple but devilishly committed to its gory killer concept. Sometimes all you really need is less than 90 minutes of a horrible children's party entertainer stalking and slicing people up. If you love retro 80s style horror B-movies, this is going to be a blast for you when art is unleashed once again. 7. Gretel and Hansel. Yes, we have seen this story told lots of different ways over the years, including one of those weird action redos that was so popular for about 5 minutes a few years back, but have we ever seen one called Gretel and Hansel? No. Seriously though, that is not the only hype builder here, otherwise Men-X would have been done long ago. This new take on the age-old fairy tale is directed by I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House Helmer Oz Perkins, and stars its own Beverly in Sophia Lillis and newcomer Sam Leakey as her far younger brother. It's thankfully going to be a real horror with the promise of a nexus of terrifying evil. Really, all you had to say was Bev was there and we'd all be invested though, so I'm sold. 6. Last Night in Soho. Last Night in Soho's big appeal point is the return of Edgar Wright to the horror genre years after he showed the world how meta-horror didn't have to just be Wes Craven's new Nightmare rip-offs, yes, including Scream, that nodded to the audience about rules. Even more excitingly, Wright's follow-up to Baby Driver probably isn't going to be an Easter egg fest, at least not in the overt way Shaun of the Dead was, with the director confirming that he is drawing on the likes of Don't Look Now and Roman Polanski's Repulsion. He's also assembled a brilliant cast headed by Anna Taylor-Joy, yes, Matt Smith, Diana Rigg and Terence Stamp. Wright knows horror to the depth of his bones, so if there is one film next year that knows where it comes from, it will be this one. It will be. It'll be this one. 5. The Invisible Man. Not so long ago, when Tom Cruise grinned his way towards uncharacteristic disaster in The Mummy, it looked like Universal Monsters' Dark Universe was dead before it even arrived, which is sort of fitting for a supernatural franchise, but it wasn't in the good way. Now, though, we can all rejoice, thanks to the intervention of Jason Blum and his own personal Fear Factory, who hired Lee Winnell after the Johnny Depp version of The Invisible Man was scrapped and put together what looks like a way more interesting project. The cast is headed by Elizabeth Moss, which is an immediate guarantee of quality as a woman tormented by the boyfriend she thought had killed himself previously. Excitingly, he is played by The Haunting of Hill House's Oliver Jackson Cohen. All in all, we're looking at a team of people who really know horror. So let's hope we get to see that. Do you get it? It's The Invisible Man, played out on screen. 4. Army of the Dead. Years after he made one of the only truly amazing horror movie remakes in Dawn of the Dead, Zack Snyder is putting all of that superhero unpleasantness behind him, fingers crossed, and is returning to the genre. And even more specifically, he's getting his zombie on again, which is very exciting. Handed $90 million of Netflix's hard-gotten money, Snyder has called upon Dave Bautista and a ragtag crew of mercenaries including Ella Purnell, Krista Elia, Omari Hardwick and Garrett Dillahunt for a casino heist flick set against a zombie apocalypse. Some people have strange priorities, but hell, it sure sounds entertaining at least. Zombies against people with actual guns is always a nice change of pace, and Snyder is at home in this type of apocalyptic mess, so let's hope it's going to be the return to form that it really, really could be. 3. The Fear Street Trilogy. If you're looking for a spooky summer romance, do we have the thing for you? For many horror fans, R.L. Stine's books were a big part of our formative years, getting the chills. And whilst the Goosebumps movies haven't exactly been brilliant, there has been something different about Fear Street. For a start, it's a trilogy of movies set to be released in consecutive months, which is a release gimmick that we can all get behind if the first one is actually any good. Set in 1994, the series will take on 3 stories from Stine's iconic series, with a cast of relative unknowns and some timeline shenanigans that bring together characters from the 90s and the 1600s. The fact that it's all being kept pretty tightly under wraps is actually pretty exciting too. 2. Ghostbusters 2020. Bustin' makes everybody feel good, especially Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Sigourney Weaver, and Annie Potts, who are all now confirmed to be returning for Jason Reitman's belated follow-up to his father's 1989 sequel. To be honest, that information alone would be enough to pull a lot of people into the cinema even 30 years on. But the bigger appeal here comes in the fact that this is also a legacy movie following a family, presumably played by Paul Rudd, Finn Wolfhard, Carrie Coon, and McKenna Grace, who move back to their small town home and begin to discover exactly who they they are. That is not much to go on just yet, but the idea of a new Ghostbusters made by Reitman and starring the original cast with new ideas is as great as it has always been. 1. Halloween Kills. After the huge success of the Halloween revival, it was always likely that we were getting more sequels, even with Jamie Lee Curtis having stressed more than once over the years that she is done with the franchise. It's amazing what a rare success can do for your enthusiasm. Announced alongside Halloween Ends, the next stop for this sprawling franchise will once more use the talent on screen and behind the camera that made the last one so good. And interestingly, it seems that we're going to be seeing the reappearance of every person whose lives Michael Myers has affected in one way or another over the years. It sounds sort of like an intervention, but maybe Michael's decided to start tying up some loose ends, eh? Either way, if they recapture the magic of the 2018 revival, we are all in for a treat. And that's our list. What horror movies are you most excited for? I've been Ash, and this has been What Culture. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and come back again soon for some more lovely film content. Thank you for watching.